On this vote, the yeas are 158, the nays are...
Mr. Israel. Mr. Israel votes aye. Mr. Heisinger. Mr. Heisinger votes no. Ms. Matsui. Ms. Matsui votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 161, the nays are 259, and the amendment's not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 2, printed in the House Report 112-54 by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the nays prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 2-minute vote.
This vote on an amendment that would modify the EPA process for considering and proposing greenhouse gas regulations. As negotiations on spending for this budget year continues, the House Budget Committee is meeting today about federal spending for next year, fiscal 2012. The Associated Press writes that the Congressional Budget Office provided fodder for critics of a Republican plan being debated before the House committee today, saying that most future retirees would pay considerably more for health care under the GOP approach, which turns Medicare from a government-run insurance plan to a voucher-like plan for those now 54 and younger. The Budget Committee is in recess right now because of those votes in the House, but our coverage of the Budget Committee will continue live on C-SPAN 3, C-SPAN Radio, and cspan.org when members return. That Budget Committee meeting is expected to go late into the evening tonight. You can also read the GOP budget plan for fiscal 2012 at cspan.org.
On this vote, the yeas are 157, the nays are 266, and the amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Murphy, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Murphy of Connecticut.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this is a 2-minute vote.
The House voting now on another amendment vote, 6 more amendment votes after this one. The larger bill would take away the EPA's power to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. So while a vote is scheduled in the House tomorrow on another short-term federal spending bill, negotiations continue on funding for the rest of fiscal 2011. That's through September 30th. House Speaker John Boehner and Senate Leader Harry Reid are scheduled to meet with President Obama tonight. That scheduled time is 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. House Speaker John Boehner is quoted in Politico today saying that he remains hopeful a deal can be reached and that talks would continue. Also, a headline in the New York Times, White House says shutdown would harm the economy. The White House warned today that a shutdown of the federal government would threaten the nation's fragile economic recovery, but negotiations on the budget remain stalled. The administration says that nearly 800,000 federal workers would probably be told to stop working if the deal was not reached within the next 2 days.
On this vote, the yeas are 182, the nays are 240, and the amendment is not adopted. Committee will be in order. Members, please take your seats. Committee will be in order. Would members please take their seats? Would members please take their seats? The committee will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
To address the House out of order for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection. Gentleman from Michigan is
Mr.
recognized.
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have permission to revise and extend their remarks. Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay tribute to one of our dear friends and colleague, our good friend from West Virginia, Representative Nikki Jo Rahall, who will cast in this next vote his 20,000th vote in this House of Representatives.
Order.
Mr. Chairman, this is a milestone event. It gives us an opportunity to recognize the great work done by our distinguished friend and colleague from Beckley, West Virginia. He is always serving his constituents and doing so well. He also strives to work across the aisle, and he is the kind of member I believe we all feel we should be. Mr. Chairman, I ask my colleague, Mr. Rahall, to rise so that we may all join together in paying tribute to our friend and colleague, Nick Rahall, on the occasion of his 20,000th vote. Stand up, Nick. This is my time.
Without objection, 2-minute votings will continue. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 6, printed in the House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from California, Mr. Waxman, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the nays prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 6, printed in House Report Number 112-54, offered by Mr. Waxman of California.
The recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this is a 2-minute vote. 2-minute vote.
This amendment, offered by Representative Waxman, states that Congress accepts EPA scientific research that climate change is caused by human action. A few more details about the one-week federal funding bill the House plans to vote on tomorrow. The extension would also fund the Defense Department through September 30th. It would propose cuts of $12 billion for the rest of the fiscal year and would include several policy riders dealing with the EPA and regulating greenhouse gas emissions. Here's how the Associated Press characterizes the vote tomorrow. Determined to avoid political blame if a shutdown occurs, Speaker Boehner said the House would vote on a one-week stopgap bill. Yesterday, President Obama said he would accept a 2- or 3-day extension of federal funding, but not the one-week extension proposed by Republicans.
On this vote, the ayes are 184, the nays are 240. The amendment is not passed. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 8, printed in the House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 8, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Polis of Colorado.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote. A 2-minute vote.
4 more amendment votes after this one. The House is not expected to vote on final passage of the EPA bill today. President Obama will meet tonight with House Speaker John Boehner and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid about federal spending for the rest of this budget year. That meeting was announced after House Republicans said they would vote tomorrow on a 1-week federal spending bill.
Vote, the yeas are 168.
Mr. Bass, New Hampshire. Mr. Bass of New Hampshire voted no.
On this vote, the yeas are 168, the nays are 257. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 9, printed in House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Another amendment vote to that EPA bill. 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time tonight is when President Obama is scheduled to meet with House Speaker John Boehner and Senate Leader Reid. Politico writing that the one-week spending bill that the House will vote on tomorrow is a last-ditch effort by House Republicans to show that they're trying to keep the government open, but cutting spending at a rate 6 times higher than their last continuing resolution. Democrats have signaled that it's a non-starter. That spending bill tomorrow would propose cuts of $12 billion for the rest of the fiscal year. President Obama spoke about energy independence at a wind turbine plant today. This happens as gas prices rose another 2 cents yesterday to a national average of just over $3.68 a gallon. The president today saying that there's little he can do to lower gas prices over the short term. That'll need to happen by reducing oil imports, tapping domestic energy sources, and shifting the nation to renewable and less polluting energy sources. The president has set a goal of reducing oil imports by 1/3 by 2025.
On this vote, the yeas are 156, the nays are 266, and the amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 10, printed in the House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 10, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this is a 2-minute vote.
House voting now on an amendment that would delay the effective date of the EPA bill repeal until the EPA and DOD certify that the national security would not be jeopardized. 2 more amendment votes after this one. The Associated Press writing that time growing short, congressional leaders reported making headway today in talks to cut spending and avert a partial government shutdown. The White House warning that it would hit U.S. combat troops abroad and taxpayer refunds from the IRS.
1 minute remaining in this vote. 1 minute. On this vote, the yeas were 165, the nays are 260, and the amendment is not approved. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 11, printed in the House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Doyle, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 11, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Doyle of Pennsylvania.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this is a 2-minute vote.
The House is continuing votes on amendments to a bill that would take away the EPA's power to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. This amendment would require the EPA study whether the repeal would reduce U.S. effectiveness in some international markets. One more vote after this one. During this vote, we're going to look at some of the live coverage that we'll have tomorrow. 2 hearings. At 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the House Foreign Affairs Committee hears from Susan Rice. She's the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, testifying about proposals to change the structure of the United Nations. That's on C-SPAN 3. And then at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, also on C-SPAN 3, the House Armed Services Committee will take a look at the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy on gays in the military.
On this vote, the yeas are 173, the nays are 250, and the amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 12, printed in the House Report 112-54 by the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kine, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 12, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Kind of Wisconsin.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and it is a 2-minute vote.
This is the last vote of the day. A final passage vote is expected tomorrow in the House on this EPA bill dealing with greenhouse gas emissions. President Obama will meet tonight with House Speaker Boehner and Senate Leader Harry Reid about federal spending for the rest of this budget year. And the House plans to vote tomorrow on a 1-week federal spending bill while the negotiations continue between the White House, the House, and the Senate. Meanwhile, the House Budget Committee is meeting today about federal spending for next year, fiscal 2012. The Budget Committee is in recess right now because of those votes in the House, but our coverage of the Budget Committee will continue live on C-SPAN 3, C-SPAN Radio, and cspan.org when members return. This meeting of the House Budget Committee is expected to go late into the evening.
Yeas were one.
Mr. Pence. Mr. Pence votes no. Mr. Clyburn. Mr. Clyburn voted aye. Ms. Roybal-Allard. Ms. Roybal-Allard votes aye. Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Great job.
Off no on aye for Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
The yeas are 160, the nays are 264, and the amendment is not agreed to. The question is on the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises. Thank you.
Down there, you switch with him. Here, you take this though.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the committee of the whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 910 concerning the House Resolution 203. I report the bill back to the House for amendment adopted in the committee of the whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 910 and pursuant to House Resolution 203 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the question is on adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend the Clean Air Act to prohibit the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency from promulgating any regulation concerning, taking action relating to, or taking into consideration the emission of a greenhouse gas to address climate change and for other purposes.
Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further proceedings on this bill will be postponed. House will be in order. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
I will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. Requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition? Without objection. Gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the first week of April is National Public Health Week. This year's theme, Safety is No Accident, Live Injury-Free, highlights the fact that each year nearly 30 million people in our country are injured severely enough to require emergency room treatment. Of those injured, 150,000 die from these unintentional and often preventable injuries, which are ranked among the top 10 causes of death of those between the ages of 1 and 44. In addition to the devastating impact on families and communities, these injuries account for 12% of annual medical spending in the United States, totaling as much as $65 billion each year. These statistics highlight a critical public health challenge for the 21st century. For that reason, I introduced H.Res. 187, which recognizes the first week of April as National Public Health Week and calls on all Americans to take a proactive approach to addressing injuries in our country. I urge my colleagues to co-sponsor H.Res. 187. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. Further requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
I want to revise and extend my remarks. 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just yesterday, the Veterans Affairs Committee had a hearing where the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs stated that because of the budget cuts that the Republicans are advocating, that likely government shutdown, the veterans' pension checks may not go out on time. Believe it or not, this is not April Fool. At the same time, the veterans' checks may arrive late. My Republican colleagues want to extend tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. Just last December, we were forced to vote on extending the Bush tax cut for millionaires and billionaires, adding $700 billion to the deficit. The Republican plan for the fiscal 11 budget year, as well as the new budget plan that just released, is nothing more than reverse Robin Hood, taken from the poor and middle-class people to give huge tax breaks to the rich. You know, Mr. Speaker, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. The American people will wake up. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. Further requests for 1-minute speeches. What purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
The House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. About a year ago, the United Nations passed the infamous Goldstone Report. Thankfully, this Congress, on the floor of the House, we had a debate and we rejected the Goldstone Report. Well, guess what happened last week? Judge Goldstone said that his report was erroneous. And what did the Goldstone report say? The Goldstone report said that Israel deliberately targeted civilians in Gaza. And that has now been proven not to be true. Of course, the people in the UN that bash Israel all the time will continue to pretend that Judge Goldstone didn't repudiate his own report, but the fact of the matter is he did. The truth is that it is Hamas, the terrorist group, that took over the Gaza Strip. They target Israeli civilians all the time. And Israel, in trying to protect its own citizens, to go and destroy the terrorist nests, the terrorists of Hamas build their nests and their rockets and their munitions in heavily populated areas. So if civilians die, it's their fault. The Goldstone report is a lie. The United Nations should kill it once and for all, and we should be leading the way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Time has expired. Further requests for 1-minute speeches. Further requests for 1-minute speeches. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. These are interesting times we live in, and as we sit here this evening, we have a lot of things that are kind of up in the air about what's going to happen to our country and what's going to happen to our ability to fund the government for the rest of our time. And unfortunately, we don't have answers to that question. I wish we did, but we don't. But there's some things that are happening that we ought to talk about because the American people are concerned about what's going on, and in some ways they are confused. Right as we sit here today, we are looking at the possibility on Friday night at midnight of there being no more appropriated funds for the operation of the government. Some people call that shutting down the government, but that's the real term. We have no appropriated funds that are available for the operation of the government. And there's already the blame game going on up here, and this blame game is confusing to most Americans out there, and I think it's kind of important that we start off by trying to explain what's going on up here. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of what I think has gone on recently. Let's start off with the fact that the Republicans fully funded the troops and the rest of the federal government through FY 2011, which would be the 1st of October of this year, with H.R. 1 in March. The Democrats have refused that submission. The Republicans are ready with a submission that we will do today to fully fund our troops through FY 2011 again this week and come back next week to debate the rest of the budget. It seems we're hearing a message that Democrats will refuse. The House and the Senate Republicans have a bill, H.R. 1297, that simply guarantees our troops get their pay without any budget agreement. So far, the Democrats have refused. That's a bill that was put together by Congressman Gohmert and Congressman Jack Kingston. So I guess we can say that, at least I would at least offer this as a submission, that it seems that the Democrats want to hold our fighting men and women's pay hostage so that they can continue their runaway federal spending. Because really the debate here in this House today and in the Senate, which is down the way from us, is, are we going to continue to spend like drunken sailors as usual, or are we going to take a hard look at what this government's doing, and we're going to try to turn this ship of state to a ship of state that is moving in the direction of saving the American people from this runaway spending. The President has submitted us a budget proposal which carries almost $1.5 trillion of deficit spending involved in it. And what this House is trying to do is change the mood and the attitude of where this Congress sits on the issue of spending. It's time for us to take a long, hard look, and I would argue if people could have taken the time and watched the debate when we sent our first submission over to the Senate, which was, H.R. 1, there was an extensive debate that went on for hours and hours and hours on the floor of this House, with both sides participating as to what we would and would not submit in the way of cutting certain amounts of spending, and there were multiple votes. This was after this same idea had been vetted in other forums like our committee system. And yet, when it was sent to the Senate, it was dead on arrival, and the only thing they could offer as an alternative to the submission we gave them was $6 billion worth of cuts, which they even voted down. They didn't even pass that. They weren't even willing to take their meager little $6 billion versus our $60+ billion that we proposed to them. And everybody says, where's the give and take? Why don't you work together, Congress? What's wrong with you people? Well, when one side does a whole bunch of work, sends it over to the other side, they say they don't like it, they reject it, and we wait and we wait and we wait and we wait for them to submit something back so we can discuss it. Well, we've been waiting a long time now, and we still haven't gotten it back. And we've gone through 2 short-term CRs to give them the opportunity to go vote on some things in the Senate. I know they're slow. I mean, we all know they're slow. But we don't even see the Democrat majority in the Senate even trying to take things to the floor for a vote on giving us an idea where they would stand on cutting spending. Now, they love to do press releases out of smoke-filled rooms and come back from White House meetings with the President and tell us, oh, we've got this deal, which our side certainly didn't agree to, and dropping and actually doing this so-called democracy inside of the press instead of doing it by sitting down across the table or passing a bill that we can look at and examine and see if we can't work out that bill and maybe get to conference to do something under normal course of business here has not been available. Senator Reid just says dead on arrival, dead on arrival. Keep trying, dead on arrival. And what that requires is for the House members to, first off, what they're really looking for us to do is to give up our principles because of threats of this government closing down. I want to make it very clear, I have heard this ever since this debate started. The leadership of the Republicans in the House of Representatives have stated consistently every time John Boehner steps up to the microphone, we do not want to shut down the government. And I will tell you, if our if people are listening with a tight ear, they will find out that any conversation about shutting down the government has always originated from the other side of the aisle, where the Democrats tell us, watch out, they're going to shut down the government. Watch out, they're going to shut down the government. And we're saying, no, we're not. We're trying to get you to respond to us and let us know what you think is the right thing for us to do to try to do something about this overwhelming debt, this overwhelming deficits, this gigantic leap in the debt that we're going to face in the future. Just look at this chart. And you've seen it before. It's been here. I've had it here twice. Here's 2010. So 2011 is about right there. Look at 2051. Look, 300% plus. And right now we're bouncing around 100% here. That was during the Second World War. And this is where we've been ever since the Second World War. But all of a sudden, with the projections that President Obama has given us as to what he perceives is the right path for America, bam, that red line goes up and that red block comes there, and that's what our grandchildren and children are going to have to deal with. And we honestly believe that that takes this country and changes the very nature of what makes America great, because it wipes out any opportunity that possibly our children or our grandchildren could look forward to when they are overwhelmed with debt. Have you ever heard the debate that goes on among college parents and among college students when they graduate from college these days, and they're faced with $100,000 or $200,000 worth of debt to pay for these expensive college educations we've got out there, and they borrowed all the money, and how they are overwhelmed with debt to the point where they look at the salaries that are being offered them and they say, holy cow, if this is what my revenues are going to be, my income's going to be, I will never pay off this student loan. How many, I know that I've heard it from hundreds of kids, because I used to teach Sunday school at that age, and they came back from college saying, I can't believe I've got this much debt to pay off before I even start making a living. Well, that's meager compared to what this Congress, if we don't change the way we do business, is going to do to our children and our grandchildren. College debt's going to look like a walk in the park compared to that kind of accelerated debt that's going to be placed on every human being that calls themselves an American. This is frightening. It's more frightening when you think what this Congress really needs to be about and is about over here on our side, and I would hope on the other side too, is finding jobs for the American people. Now, what do the job creators think when they see this? People who run businesses, small businesses or large, they look at the projected future of the economy and they make decisions as to why they hire people for very simple reasons. You hire someone to advance your business. You don't hire them because you're a nice guy. You don't hire them because somebody gives you an incentive to hire them. You hire them because ultimately they are going to improve your productivity or your bottom line. That's why labor is infused into anything that people do. Most people start out with a small business. It's all them and maybe their family. And then when they hire that first employee, they don't hire him just because they like that kid across the street. They hire him because that first employee is going to make their business do better. Now, if they're looking at the accumulated debt being put upon them by this government, and they look at what projected debt they have to deal with, what they have to handle, where they think their revenues are going to be, what solutions there are going to be for this debt in the way of tax increases, they have to say, whoa, until somebody gets a handle on this stuff, we're looking at a world that I'm not sure I want to hire anybody else in. This is not rocket science. This is very simple. You hire to prosper. If you're afraid prosperity is not going to be a result of the hiring, you don't hire. I would argue, and I think it's an argument that's made by many, many economists and many, many editorial writers, that the fear of the unknown and the known that you think you see by the way the government is proceeding, keeps a lot of people from hiring other folks. I think that's common sense. I think anybody that knows anything about business can realize that. So this looms over everybody. And we're starting with something. I saw a cartoon up here in Washington. Many of you may have seen it. It was a gigantic elephant's behind sitting on a scale. And it had written across the back of it, national debt. And then on the very top of the backsides of that elephant was a Band-Aid about the size of, that would wrap around my little finger stuck on there, and it had an arrow right there that said, spending cuts. The reality is what the Republicans have proposed in terms of spending cuts as they relate to the gigantic mess that we're in is just that teeny-nincy little Band-Aid. And yet, this very meager proposal of changing the way we spend money has been rejected out of hand by the Harry Reid Democrats over in the Senate and by our colleagues in the House. And it is on every submission that we've made, on every attempt we've made to negotiate, on every time we have said, Senator, how about y'all getting together and come up with an alternative? And it's just, no, you're dead on arrival. We'll talk at the White House behind closed doors, or we'll talk in smoke-filled rooms, or whatever. Smoke-filled rooms is probably dates me a little bit, but there's still some smokers around here. Okay. Now, where are we tonight? I think where we are tonight, I am optimistic about where we are tonight. And the world may be sitting out there pessimistic, but I'm optimistic. Because first and foremost, I honestly believe that we're going to do everything, at least in our power, to try to get us to come up with a solution for this small spending cut bill of $60+ billion that we've put forward, which as compared to that elephant's behind is nothing. And we're going to get it done before we have to we run out of time and we run out of appropriations and the government starts to wind down. But I'm more optimistic than that because I am very optimistic that the fact that Paul Ryan and the Budget Committee of this House have put forward a proposal that is like you ought to have the Hallelujah chorus in the background when they introduced it, singing Hallelujah, because it was finally a budget that wasn't the same old budget. How can we jack every spending level up, and how can we figure a way to raise some taxes to make that work? No, it's a budget that says this budget is going to be about prosperity and preserving the America we love for our generations to come. If that's not something as we come up on this deadline, which should make us nervous, and it makes me nervous, but the big picture is our Budget Committee has put a revolutionary budget out for discussion. And that budget is worth joy on behalf of the American people. Because what it does is it says to the people around us that there are some good ideas we ought to try. I'm joined with many of my colleagues here today, and I want to give them all an opportunity to say. So let me finish up at least this short part of talking here, and let's talk to some other folks. Today, where we are is a very simple place. Are we going to fund our Department of Defense and make sure our troops get paid? Or are we going to be so with minuscule cuts, and then continue this debate so we can probably try to get a resolution next week? Or are we going to reject out of hand, as now Harry Reid is making public statements to say, and the president in Atlanta supposedly said he would veto this proposal, reject out of hand to say, we want our troops to suffer, and we don't care whether they're getting shot at. We don't care. We're ready to let them get shot at and do it without pay. And men and women who have been risking their lives for over 10 years so that we can stand in this chamber and talk. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves to even consider not doing something. All of us ought to be wanting to do something to make sure that those folks get their paychecks so their spouse and children back home don't suffer while they suffer the possibility of being killed or maimed on our behalf. And that's what this vote, this day, and tomorrow is all about. The deadline is Friday night at midnight. We're asking our senators to reconsider rejecting out of hand what we are sending over and consider it in light of that mama back home with a child on her hip telling the creditors, we have no money to pay you, and I'm sorry my husband can't talk to you. He's over in Afghanistan in the mountains trying to stay alive. Or he's flying missions into Libya trying to stay alive. So I think we really need to know that's where we are in time, and the other is stuff we're going to be talking about. I don't know whoever would like to step up, grab the back microphone, and let's talk. Oh, my friend from Virginia, step up. Tell us what you got to say, Rob.
Well,